What's up? It's Pat. It's Ground Zero Salem. Currently spinning the Crypt of the Old School mixtape, brought to us by Cryptic Fan Music via Von Frost distribution. I just can't get enough of these tapes. These bootleg tapes that Von Frost sells, Cryptic Fan Music puts together. It's just Pro J cards, blank shells, and they just put together great stuff. Lots of cool old demos. This is all previously released stuff as far as I know. It's just Venom, Bathory, and Hellhammer. You know, what else do you need? So, that's spinning right now. I got some other stuff. We'll get into this. This is going to be a massive cassette collection update, I guess. A backlog of 2.5, 3 months of stuff that's just been piling up. Do the Cryptic Fan Music stuff first, and then we got some British hardcore. We've got a whole bunch of Christian thrash metal for some reason. Some death metal, some grind, usual kind of stuff. But the Cryptic Fan Music stuff is coming first, tying in with what's currently playing. I just got this the other day. This is the Death Cult demo from Coroner. I've been wanting to get this for a while. I knew that it was like kind of significantly different from most of their album output. Vocals by one Thomas G. Warrior, which was something I thought I knew, but I kind of forgot and was pleasantly surprised by. It does kind of have a Celtic Frost kind of vibe, other than vocally. There's a little bit more basic riffing, but it's almost kind of like a Celtic Frost or Hellhammer, more technical and tight. It's kind of what it sounds like to me. Fucking great. Got the Razor Escape the Fire demo. This was an album-length demo that came out between Armed and Dangerous and Executioner's Song. Very rough sound, very like traditional heavy metal, speed metal, kind of verging on thrash. Awesome stuff. You know, I like Razor. I've got a handful of their records. This is very, very fucking raw, but in a good way. Then, I still haven't spun this yet, but I know what's on it. I've had this in a couple of different forms. It's the Lost Tapes from Merciful Fate. Just post Bratz era up till about 84. I have just a regular dubbed bootleg of this material. I'm looking forward to seeing how the quality is sound-wise. It's just a black cassette, but you know, if you're a Fate fan, you probably have heard this stuff. It's just under it, just with some nicer packaging to it. Then we got Blind Authority. This is getting into the UK hardcore stuff. British band that's been around for a while. I guess this is their last release. I have not heard them until now. Came out on Quality Control, as did the next couple of releases that I have in front of me. This is metallic hardcore, very fucking mean. There's something there for people who like integrity, who like late 80s New York hardcore, that kind of stuff. This, however, has a really, really abrasive, blown-out recording quality that almost makes me physically uncomfortable in a good way. Very fucking heavy, very scary shit. Rated X. Violent Reaction dudes. Doing a style of hardcore that's not too different from Violent Reaction. Maybe a little bit more American. A little less, like, they always, you know, Violent Reaction kind of had like an oi tinge. This does not have that. It does have like certain similarities to a lot of classic Boston hardcore. Project X, as you might imagine. Confront, you know, there's a lot of very stark contrast between the tempos and stuff. Very fucking great. Just pissed, raw 80s style, straight edge hardcore. And then Warheads. This is cool, Cro-Mag's alternate timeline kind of stuff. What if comic kind of style, like, what if the Cro-Mags around the time they were wrapping up with the touring cycle for Age of Quarrel and writing songs like Death Camps, what if they kept JJ? What if, or if JJ left, what if Harley kind of got his chops vocally a little bit better and a little less silly? That kind of thing. It's very Best Wishes Cro-Mags, but like tightened up song structures, like shorter songs, that kind of thing. Very fucking mean. Strongly influenced by the first two Cro-Mags records. then, for whatever reason, I got bitten by this weird Christian thrash, early 90s Christian thrash and death metal bug. Not sure what sparked this. Somebody I know was talking about picking up a Believer cassette, and I was like, you know what? I need to revisit Believer, so I ended up buying a bunch of tapes on the cheap. This is Living Sacrifice, their debut. It's self-titled. Came out on R.E.X, as did all of these that I'm going to talk about. 5 cassettes. This is decent, competent, maybe B-grade Slayer worship, mostly. If you like somewhere in between the Rain and Blood stuff and, like, Seasons, like, it's in there. Drummer definitely can't hold a candle to Dave Lombardo, I'll tell you that much. But even B-grade Slayer's better than a lot of stuff out there. IMHO. Next up, you got The Crucified, who are more of a crossover kind of thing from California. I really like this, except for a couple of songs are just bad. They're trying to do something a little bit different than their kind of speed crossover stuff. There's a song that has like Alice in Chains / Infectious Grooves, like wah 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 kind of vocals, if you know what I'm talking about. Not good, but most of this record is great. The vocals are really different for a crossover kind of band. They have a distinct like Orange County or like Southern California hardcore kind of vibe. They remind me sort of the dude from Outspoken, or maybe Dan O'Mahony from No for an Answer and 411. And actually, this didn't come out on this didn't come out on R.E.X. Came out on Word Records. Word. But cool tape. I checked out their self-titled, and their self-titled seems way faster and more thrashy and punk, so I'll be checking that out as well. Pillars of Humanity by The Crucified, a record that I've been familiar with for a long time, and I finally pulled the trigger on. Then I went nuts and bought the first 3 Believer records all on cassette, because, you know, the price is fine for these. It's one of those niches of the cassette thing that hasn't been driven through the roof, you know. Early Roadrunner, Earache, all that stuff on cassettes, like $30 a pop now. These God bands, the R.E.X. bands, is still like reasonable. So first, I'm familiar with this, Extraction from Mortality, the first Believer record. I used to have it as a kid. There was a brief period where my mom was a born-again Christian and flipping out over My Morbid Angel and whatnots, and I would occasionally try to appease her for a moment and pick up like a Mortification tape here and there and a Believer tape here and there. This was the one that I had. It is like straightforward thrash that's maybe bordering on death metal a little bit, but it's kind of weird, you know, almost like slightly Voivod tinged, like off kilter kind of stuff, riff wise. Weird guitar tone, very like Solid State and odd sounding, kind of hollow almost. But the songs are good, and it has a jokey punk song at the end that has like reggae parts that actually seems to be kind of a nod to the Bad Brains. I do remember one of the guys in this band like wearing a Bad Brains shirt during Metal Maniacs interviews. You'll note that there's a dude with a half-shaved head there. All the bands that I talk about had at least one member with the blacky half-shaved head thing. Not sure what's up with that, but seemed like a Christian thing to do at the time, I guess. So that one's good. All 3 of their records are really good. Probably Sanity Obscure is my favorite. This came out in '92, I think. This, they get a little bit more technical, a little bit more expansive, involving strings and stuff like that on one of the songs. Get a little bit more kind of fleshed out, I guess. You know, you could draw certain parallels to this record and the one after it, where like kind of where Death was going a little bit as far as like technicality and progressiveness. And then after that, there's Dimensions. This is an interesting one to me because the guitarist is a guy named Jim Winters, who was in an excellent hardcore band called Conviction. When I knew him, he was playing in The Promise, which was a straight edge band with members mostly from Syracuse, but also from Albany and kind of all over the place. He plays guitar currently, I believe, in Starkweather, played on a bunch of their records later on. So it's an interesting pedigree. Also, the singer from this band, Kurt something or other, produced Destroy the Machines by Earth Crisis. Interesting factoid. The music on this is Very cool, very progressive. There's a massive, like, 4-part, 3-part movement on here. 3-part movement, the Trilogy of Knowledge, that also expands on the whole string or almost orchestral violin thing. Female operatic vocals, really pretty sounding. Very, very cool approach. This, they get very technical and proggy. There's enough speed in it to still qualify as a thrash metal record, verging on death metal like the others, but very cool listen. Very talented band. Then we've got Meathook Seed. This was something I heard briefly when it came out. I ordered some other stuff from this Discog seller that also, I don't know if the actual distro they used to do online, their website is still up, but called Round Flat Records, who I ordered a lot of like new old stock sealed cassettes for metal and hardcore and punk a lot over the years. And they still have some cool stuff. I figured, what the hell, I know this is a Shane Embury project with a couple of the Obituary guys, and it's industrial metal. Just didn't hit the spot with me. Didn't spark joy. I'm not sure what it is. Maybe it's just that I have enough of that stuff in my life. I don't really listen to that kind of industrial shit that much, except for Skinny Puppy or Godflesh occasionally. Maybe Skin Chamber if I'm feeling super froggy. But, and something rhythmically about this felt like really new metal and bouncy. Then again, I was so turned off by the first like 2 or 3 songs that I just kind of turned it off. I should probably give it another shot when I'm more in the mood for industrial, which I'm due for a renaissance with, I'm sure, at some point. But I'll put it on the back burner for the time being. Love Disastrous Murmur. Austrian, I want to say. You know, gross, gory death metal. A lot of inspiration from Carcass and that kind of thing. Buddies with Pungent Stench, etc. They had a demos and 7-inch compilation come out. Skinning Beginning and Embryotic Uterocestation. The first demo is pretty rough sounding. You got to kind of be in the mood for it. It's definitely like a practice jam tape. It actually says in here, tape recorder under a coat thrown in the middle of the practice room kind of recording, so it's kind of bassy and blown out. However, the riffs are there and it's great. The 7-inch and second demo are awesome. You know, they have a certain grindy kind of gore grindy kind of thing going on, but I feel like they have a lot of sick, slower passages too. Fucking great band. Debut LP is awesome. I never really explored much past that myself. Another classic band, and this is a reformation record, reunion record. This is Nausea from LA, not the New York one. Condemned to the System, shared members with Terrorizer. Oscar Garcia sings on this. I feel like this is better than anything Terrorizer's done with any of their reunion stuff by miles and miles. Super chunky, thick riffing, very, very fucking catchy. There's a fair amount of like grindcore in it, but there's also a good sense of like hardcore punk through a very heavy, you know, sort of death metal filter. Fucking really, really good. I don't know what this came out on. Morbid something. That's the record label. Moving on. So the Disastrous Murmur came out on Floga, and Floga's a Greek cassette label that does a really good professional job putting out, re-releasing classics on cassette. I took it upon myself to pick up a few Hypocrisy tapes, the first 2, Penetralia, and I always have trouble with this, Salem Obscenum. Gotta love Hypocrisy. Peter Tagtrin, producer du jour. I always kind of dug this band because they had a certain buzzsaw, melodic, melody-tinged, kind of Swedish thing going on, but with a little bit more low-end, kind of American brutality. And I dug that. I like these 2 records quite a bit. I also really liked The Abyss, his sort of more blackened project. Yeah, I'm such a first 2 records kind of guy. I never really got into anything past the Fourth Dimension. Getting into Hypocrisy growing up, but this is some nasty, violent sounding death metal while retaining some melody. Very fucking evil. Evil stuff. Last thing my beloved Dr. Shrinker put out here. It's a rehearsal tape that sounds better than sonically, you know, production-wise, sounds better and is probably tighter than their classic demo material from the late 80s. But live assembly of the Disinhumed. Just, if you're familiar with Shrinker, this is, I think, all pre-release stuff. I don't think there's any new songs on here. And it's just great. Great classic death metal. Slightly technical, you know, slightly grindcore tinged, kind of medical horror themed, kind of raspy higher vocals. Great band. Another Floga tape. Oh no, this isn't Floga. A Dread Records release. This was also a Dread Records release, for that matter. Another Dread Records release. This is Eucharist, a Velvet Creation. Had a lot of, not a lot of people, but a few people really singing the praises of this, being classic, melodic, Swedish death metal. Not mellow death as such, but kind of sacramentum or dissection, kind of evil, slightly blackened, you know, unanimated, stuff like that. I went down a big rabbit hole for last year. And so I picked this up. The songwriting is top-notch. The riffs are really impressive. There's this cool classical guitar-inspired stuff all over it. Production and drum sound are not good to my ears. It's got the typewriter drums, and those kind of drums work okay for me if the guitars are huge and thick, but they're kind of thin on this. I can see why this is considered such a classic, because the music's so well written. Sounds so good, but this is one of those cases where I'm like, I don't know, maybe if they did a re-recording, I wouldn't mind it, because the production for this style of music is not what does it for me. But songs kick ass. That is the important thing. Up next, Outre Tombe, Nekrovortex. This is a band from Quebec. Incredibly fun, fast-paced, raw death metal. You know, there's something for you there if you like Entombed, early Autopsy, Repulsion, all that kind of stuff. You know, late 80s, that kind of thing. Lots of, like, you know, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, quote-unquote polka beat kind of stuff. You know, not a lot of blasting or anything like that. Just a lot of frenetic kind of forward-charging energy. Great shit. Ordered some other boots from this, I think, Eastern European tape label, Serpent Eve Records. And it's kind of a similar deal to Cryptic Fan Music, where it's, you know, nice full-color J-cards and just dub cassettes. Just a few things. I don't even remember what rabbit hole I went down to, like, start looking at their label, you know, bored at work as usual or whatever. This is a band I'd never heard of previously that I was just like, hey, why the hell not? Salem from Jerusalem. Creating Our Sins. Early black metal. Black metal in a very non-Scandinavian sense. You know, you could point to, like, the Greek guys or Samael, you know, that kind of stuff. So kind of mid-paced in the most part. Like, there's some good thrashing on there, you know, some good 4/4 speed drumming here and there, but a lot of it's just kind of deliberately paced, heavy, you know, sort of death metalish black metal. It's really fucking good. I checked out some later records and they were kind of overproduced to me. This is nice and raw. There's just enough sloppiness to make it interesting to me. Creating Our Sins. This also, and as far as I know, most versions of this out there have like some, like, almost a full album's worth of live songs. And those songs sound great, too. So, check that out. You know, Sacrifice, you know, that kind of stuff. Christ Agony, kind of in the same realm. This is a band I've heard of for years, this Polish band, Christ Agony. I have no idea where this is in their discography. It's called Demon Sooth. Demon Seth, Act 2. Whatever that means. Also, yeah, kind of mid-paced, deliberately paced, heavy, you know, dripping with evil, kind of black death metal sort of stuff from Poland. There's a little bit more goth on this, now that I'm remembering. There's, like, some kind of clean, you know, almost Andrew Eldritch-y kind of vocals thrown in there, which I definitely appreciate. So I'd like to hear more. You know, if you're watching this and you happen to know your Christ Agony, tell me what to check out, where that falls in their discography. Dysentery. This band I want to say was from Austria too. I could be very wrong about that. They are from Europe. This came out in the early 90s. This is a weird album. It's very incompetent carcass worship, and to me that's a great thing. It has the pitch shifted vocals switching off with the kind of shrieky vocals like Carcass did on their first couple of records, but it's about at half speed because the drummer can't really keep up that well. To me it's just a glorious mess. This type of shit isn't for everybody. You know, there's attempts at going fast, but you can tell the dude's just kind of learning his instrument, and I fucking love it. It's just it's a fucking car wreck. It's great. Dysentery, Brings Me No Tears. And yeah, I want to say Austria, might be Poland, I don't know, somewhere in Europe. Then we have Atrocity, not the Atrocity from Germany, the Atrocity from Connecticut. This is called Infected. I picked up, somebody repressed their demo on 12-inch, and that was, I got that. I just started making videos at that point, so it was a little while ago. That demo is great. It's way more, almost kind of like a brutal thrash kind of thing, like Incubus or something like that. This is definitely on par with Repulsion and Slaughter for, like, you know, early grind, early death metal. It's got a thrashing sort of thing going on, a little bit more crossover leaning than those bands. Like you can feel maybe a little bit of influence of New York hardcore just from their proximity to New York on it. There's a lot of songs on this, 22 songs in 38 minutes. And that's a lot, you know, 40 minutes of that kind of music is a lot to take in one sitting with 22 songs, and it's like butter. Super well written. Very fucking cool band. I don't know why nobody talks about this band. I have no idea why. American band. Random one that I'm just going to throw out there for spice. Seika Love Shim. Picked this up at the Record Exchange in Salem for $5. I remember reading about this band. I think I read a few interviews with them back in the day. They were a band that was talked about a fair amount in Thrasher and Metal Maniacs. They were on Tang Records, which at the time was a Boston label. Dude moved out to Curtis from Tang, moved out to California. And this was a period where Tang put out a lot of hardcore stuff, a lot of Boston hardcore stuff like Slapshot and that sort of thing. They put out Poison Idea, but they expanded into, they put out some Lemonheads records and Lear's records. They also kind of tried their hand at releasing some oddball metal bands like Maelstrom, who were that kind of typical of that early 90s funk metal stuff, and Seika, who are actually really fun. It's kind of like a lighter thrash metal in the vein of the early 90s when thrash was waning. There were bands like Wrathchild America, Mordred, who are also kind of funk metal. Panic, not the hardcore band. There was a thrash metal band called Panic that had a really clean vocal delivery, a very cleaned up production. Weren't quite the riff salad that a lot of the Bay Area bands were. They had a lot of the, you know, the palm muting and the chunkiness of thrash, but there was a little bit more of a pop sensibility. It was a very small amount of bands that kind of fell in that. Seika's a good example of that. There's some songs that are straight up thrash metal, some songs that are almost kind of like goofy punk. One thing of note is that they named themselves after a porn actress, Seika, 80s porn actress. Not a bad record. The tape is very worn out, though. Apparently, nobody QC'd this, but it's still listenable. Yeah, it's an interesting listen. It's definitely of its time. I'm glad I checked it out. It's kind of a fun one. And then finally, I also picked this up from Von Frost. They might still have copies. I know this is kind of a hot band right now. I picked up the new Ruin. I know that they had their previous album, which I don't know the name of off the top of my head, was a pretty big deal. They have some demos and stuff like that that people are flipping out over. This is my introduction to Ruin. Their brand new album, Human Annihilation. It's crazy. This is so monstrously heavy that it sounded like I had it on the wrong speed, but obviously I couldn't have it on the wrong speed because it's a tape. You know, it definitely sounded like a 45 at 33 kind of thing, just dragging you through a fucking swamp with body parts in it kind of thing going on. Very fucking monstrously heavy. Certainly inspired by bands like Impetigo, Necrophagia, that sort of thing. It's definitely that kind of death metal with modern production. Very dirty, but still modern sounding production. And things a little bit more together and competently played. But it's very simplistic, barbaric, and fucking horror inspired, which is everything up my alley. So this is a great one. You know, we'll see if I do a 2019 list, but that'll definitely be on it. Human Annihilation by Ruin. This came out on Von Frost and somebody else. Nero 1. Nero 1 and Von Frost. That's a good partnership. All right, so that's it. Maybe I'll leave links to stuff. We'll see if I have time. You know, there's some interesting stuff on here. Definitely do yourself a favor and check out that Salem record. It's pretty incredible. Everybody have a good rest of their weekend.